Motivated business owner, welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Spotlight. I'm your host, Reid, and today's bright sparks are Omar Parker and Charles Burt of Egerton Crescent Productions, which they founded with the goal of creating amazing cinema and online media content. And boy, have they done that. Since 2015, the business has had films shown in all major film festivals, including Sundance and Tribeca. They've marketed and sold films in over 100 countries and have clocked up well over 100 million viewers along the way. Today they'll be flicking the switch on how they got their start, the secrets to getting video content noticed, why they wrote a Japanese poetry book, I promise it's relevant, plus the guys will share their learnings from working alongside some of the world's biggest YouTubers, including Mr. Beast and Preston. Omar and Charles, welcome to the Spotlight.
Hi.
Hi, nice to be here.
Now, fellas, whilst in college, you built and scaled a production company into tens of millions of viewers. I'm sure there's not one little piece of secret sauce, but how did you do that?
Well, I guess I should start with how we kind of met on that one a little bit. So Omar and I met I guess it'd be the first day at university. We had a film studies class together. He was across the hall, and he had answered a couple of questions. I thought he was a little bit too knowledgeable, and I was like, well, here we go. Here's what everyone's going to be like here, isn't it? And then I met him later on that day in the film lab, in the photo lab, actually. And he was putting these wet photo negatives and shoving them into his backpack. You're supposed to dry them, cut them, put them in these nice folders. But no, he's just shoving these wet film negatives in his bag. And that's when I actually approached him for the first time. And we started talking about what we enjoyed about film, why we were in the course, what we were doing there, what our goals were. And that's when we decided we were pretty well aligned on what we enjoyed and what we wanted to do. And so we had started talking about maybe we should try and make something happen here. And that was the beginning of kind of where the basis of the company was. And I can let Omar kind of take over for a minute from his perspective on that one.
I guess it made me more approachable.
Charles,
right?
Yeah, well, that's right. Wondering whether Charles was approaching you, Omar, because he was concerned about your actions of putting wet film into a bag, or whether you thought, hey, he's my kind of guy.
He thought it was a travesty. He's always been more of a visual guy. He was a photo student. You know, he has beautiful photos that he does as a hobby. I was always a story guy first, so for me, a lot of the visual stuff, I was kind of like, it's a means to an end, you know, and I didn't really do a lot of photography, so I was like, I just got to get through this intro to photo class. It has a little grain, you know?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said. Talking to business partners, I had a host of this podcast for the first 80 episodes, and his name was Luke, and he was everything I wasn't. And that made it really, really good, because there was this tension between us all the time. And clearly, maybe it's not a tension, but you two bring different things to the table.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's definitely, sometimes it's good to have someone that balances you out.
Yeah.
It fills that other half. No one can do everything by themselves, but sometimes it's helpful to have someone that fills you out.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so the crazy stuff's on the table. How did you decide to start a production company and scale this thing in your dorm to tens of millions of viewers?
I think we realized what opportunities were available to us at our age at that point and what we could get into. And with the advent of so many festivals having an easy submit through online platforms, being able to reach out to filmmakers digitally, there was a lot of barriers that weren't in existence. And it was a time where filmmaking, you could reach out to these new people and they were willing to get back to you because those barriers digitally didn't exist either. They were open to reading a DM or getting back to a cold email. So when we were in college, we wanted to reach out to these filmmakers, and we sent thousands of cold emails trying to get to know filmmakers, build our network, and grow and expand. And that's how we started it. So every day we go to class, and every evening we would spend all night at home sending these cold emails, literally thousands of them, trying to meet filmmakers, try to get to know people, get ourselves fully embedded into the film industry. And we had good success with that. We were able to hop on board with some projects, creatively provide script notes, help with submissions for festivals. But the company and our careers really skyrocketed at Sundance in 2018 when we attended the festival. And then we actually were able to go, because we had films at festivals before, but we never had a chance to attend due to our university schedule. And in 2018, we decided, this seems like it's working. Let's take some time off of class, risk it. Omar didn't turn in several papers and missed an exam over it. And we went to Sundance in 2018. And it was one of the best things we did for our career at that phase, because we were now in the industry. We had 2 short films in competition at Sundance in 2018. So we got to go to all the parties. We got to meet everyone. And that was the huge catalyst for us, like, launching forward into the film industry, and kind of we're able to put a face and a name together, because we had credits before, but no one had a face to who these guys were making these projects out of basically a college dorm room.
You know, it's amazing, and Omar, I'll let you sort of add to that in a minute, but it's amazing how much getting out of your office and getting away from all the nonsense and actually where the rubber hits the road, meeting people, networking. What do they say? Your net worth equals your network, and just, you know, meeting people. You know, I never graduated. It didn't hurt. I went and, you know, got practical experience, and it's a really interesting thing that you've done. Did you graduate, boys?
We did.
I'm sorry to hear that.
A lot of help from the professor.
we had
it was
a lot of help and a lot of independent study credits for our work, and that was able to push us to make the requirements for graduation occur.
Yeah. We had one professor that was his name was Dennis Ag, and he helped us out a lot because he was also a filmmaker. And I think one of the reasons we wanted to do this and we were so proactive when we were in college is that everyone was telling us, don't just rest on a degree. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. Like, the degree is helpful, and it helped me meet, you know, my business partner and things like that, just in terms of networking there. Yes. But I think it's just, don't just rest on that. Don't be prepared to just be like, oh, I'm going to graduate and then everything's going to work out.
Yeah.
So we just were like, well, let's hit the ground running now. We're 18. Let's start moving. And, you know, so there was a lot of working through that.
Like, when we got to Sundance, Omar was still so young. He wasn't allowed into several of the industry events. I turned 21 at that point, because it was about like, as our junior year, sophomore year, somewhere there. And so I was allowed into the events at Sundance because of Utah's strict liquor laws, because I was 21 at that point. So I could go into these events.
Can't even be
but
in a
Omar
bar.
was literally stuck outside, and I had to send people out that I was meeting to go outside the event to talk to him on the sidewalk. But like, no, my business partner and co-producer is out there. You should go talk to him, then come back and we'll talk again.
What a
so
great...
it's like,
I love that. I love it. Little Omar. How you going, brother?
I know, I'm just like out on a balcony. Are you having fun? Are you meeting people?
Do you want another raspberry lemonade?
As I'm in there in the warm weather and he's in the freezing cold in Park City, Utah, and I'm like hanging out with John Hamm, and he sees me like through the window having a great time with drinks and enjoying myself, and he's out there in a puffy coat still freezing.
Charles, can you? It's a while back now, but can you remember? And Omar, but Charles had a much more bigger role at Sundance. Can you remember? Just was there one person? Was there one piece of advice? Was there something you saw or overheard that was quite an epiphany for you?
I think I realized what presence meant in a room the very first time that I was at one of Sundance's key events for the festival, which they put on. They bring the industry and press in, and it was the arrive late, make an entrance, and John Hamm walks in, as tall as he is, coming off of Mad Men, and it was like, that guy has a serious presence in a room. That's what celebrity and presence means, and that was a big moment for me. And another big one was...
There's a reason they're called stars, Charles.
Yeah. I was definitely struck, and I'm not one of those people to get starstruck, but it was one of those, like, that person just commands a room, and that was...
And you can see other people reacting to it, too. It's how other people... You can tell, like, the level of respect immediately in the room. We're like, wow,
nice.
Okay, big deal.
And then the other one was... We had bumped into someone, we were trying to get, like, career advice, and their advice was just do it. If you want to do it, try it. You might fail, but just give it a try. Just do it. And we thought it was the most ridiculous thing. We joked about it for years, and actually we still talk about it to this day of, well, just do it. Try it. If it's not going to be that big of a failure, maybe it will work. It's worth a try. And I think that stuck with both Omar and I for a long time. As much of a funny thing as it was in the time of just do it, it was pretty sound advice.
Yeah, I thought he was joking at first because it was this long-winded question of like, well, any success?
Yeah.
How should we find success? How should we do things? And it was like, well, just do it. Just go make a movie. Like, just go do it.
Do you know, just to that point, and I know you guys are based in Texas, I interviewed a real estate agent a number of years ago who had won the listing to sell the Wagner Ranch, which is the biggest cattle ranch in Texas. Land size... I think it's bigger than California, something ridiculous. And the price tag was $1 billion. And I interviewed him about, God, how did you get that listing? How did you sell the property for $1 billion? Thinking there's going to be some amazing long-winded strategy. And he, like the fellow who said to you, just do it. This fellow said, I just built relationships with the vendor.
Yeah.
That was it. It was like,
End
of podcast. So, boys, you're in your college dorm. You go to Sundance. You start networking. You start shaking hands, meeting people. People get to know you. But to get to Sundance, you had to have a film. You had to have invented something, right? So you're 18 years old. I'm guessing you don't have big budgets. What did you create, or how did you create something so good that?
Yeah, so we had some budget. Basically, what we had allocation for beer for myself, not Omar, and then we had an allocation of everything else was going into what we were trying to pursue with film. So we were able to help participate financially in 2 short films. One was Shandine Tome, and she was a part of the Native American project at Sundance. And she was working on a project. And then the other one was with a French director named Mark Johnson, and he had previously had to work at Sundance before. And we became involved in both of those projects, and then miraculously both made it into Sundance in the same year. Yeah.
It's that networking we were talking about of reaching out to so many people as we were kind of, and hedging our bets of, okay, people that are in Sundance programs, people that have had these films at big festivals before, what are they doing? Do they have current projects? Can we help them? How can we help them?
What a great story. If you're finding this chat with Omar Parker and Charles Burt of Egerton Crescent Productions illuminating, then access all episodes of the Small Business Big Marketing Spotlight on your favourite podcast app. Now, boys, you've done a few jobs and productions since that famous time when you're 18 at Sundance. Let's go through them. First of all, well, I don't even know where to start. You've got the Japanese playbook. We've got, billboards in Times Square. Why don't we start with working alongside Mr. Beast and Preston? Because those two guys have smashed YouTube out of the park. Yeah. What have you learned from working alongside them?
A lot. It was a very different world. So this was more recently. This was a couple years ago. It was kind of out of college, and really, we were looking for kind of just a different change of pace. COVID was hitting. It was ravaging theaters. A lot of the traditional model was kind of going out. It just it was turning towards streaming. It was turning towards digital content. And so we really wanted to kind of find a way to get in there. And so, we started networking, started talking to people, and ended up working for Preston as a producer in his channel. And he's down here in Dallas, Texas.
Just for those of us who don't know, Preston is, he's a personal, not a company, big personal YouTuber.
Yeah, so Preston is a huge YouTuber, and he kind of does have a company. Yeah. One of the surprising things I've found about a lot of these YouTubers is just the scale of the production that they're a part of. But yeah, so he started out as, just a kid recording video games in his room. And he's done it since he was 10. He's about 28 now, and he's got 25 million subscribers on his main channel. He has 7+ channels combined. They all have, I believe, around 80 million subscribers at this point. He works with all the big YouTubers, top 100 subscribed YouTuber, Forbes top 10 YouTuber, all the jazz. So, and he was really big because he opened a lot of doors in terms of just speaking to other people. He works with Jimmy, Mr. Beast, and he works with, Lachlan, Mark Rober, all of those guys. The YouTube world, once you kind of get into it, it's a very small circle. Everyone knows everyone kind of at a certain level. But I learned a ton from them because they're not, when you're working in Hollywood, it's very you're dealing with SAG-AFTRA, you're dealing with, all the unions, all the, everything's been done the way it's been done since the jazz singer,
whether it's right
the
or
1910s. Wrong. Yeah, whether it's right or wrong, everything has been done the same. Yeah. And YouTube is kind of interesting because you have a lot of people that are making content and figuring it out as they go. So they've developed new methods, new teams, new strategies. And one of the things that was so surprising to me is I remember coming into it and expecting a team of 5 people coming into that kind of position. And I was like, oh, wow, there's 100 people at this company full time that are working on these 7 channels. You got editing teams, producing teams, writing team, all these people that are working on just creating content and ideas and fun things. And, Preston's obviously the head of it, and he's leading it and, doing an incredible job scaling this business. But at a certain point, only one person can only put out so much content as one person, so they just have these massive units. So yeah, it's incredible what you can learn from them just from starting stuff from a small town by themselves as one person in a room.
I think from an outsider looking into both Preston and Mr. Beast, is that, like you said, they just do things differently. They don't know. there's no rule book because it's the wild. YouTube arguably is still the Wild West in some way, shape, or form, despite an incredible amount of content going up every minute of the day. But these guys, and maybe it's an age thing too, a generation thing. They don't want to do it like my generation did it. They don't want to do it they just want to do it so that it's effective. And I mean, even the fact that Mr. Beast reinvests every dollar back into the business and doesn't, I assume, live some lavish lifestyle. That's very his generation, not my generation. We'd be off on bloody yachts and islands.
Yeah, I mean, they put so much into it, and it's absolutely insane, just like the level of dedication and commitment to, and they build these really loyal audiences from nothing. And, one thing that I think they have right, like, I think there are some things that film has right, and I think there are some things that they have right, and, there's a blend somewhere in there where I think we're heading, just as a convergence point with streaming and all of these YouTubers and stuff. But the things that I think they really get right is connecting to an audience, and really, does my audience care about this? I think a lot of times in Hollywood we'll get lost in a lot of award ceremonies and critics and things like that, and we lose a lot of people that actually are just going to see the movie or see the show. And are they going to be invested? Are they going to be interested? And they've also adapted a lot of strategies in terms of just how they make their content. Like in YouTube, you have to start with a bang. You will lose your audience so fast when people click on things. So in an age where there's so much competing media, so much competing, things vying for your attention, you have to stand out. You have to grab it immediately, and you can't let go. There's no their editing is so different from film because there's never a moment where you're like, wow, I'm really bored.
Yeah.
It's always moving. Yeah. It's always moving.
What pressure! What incredible pressure! I jumped into Preston and Mr. Beast. Prior to that, you boys have made a lot of films. I'd be very interested to know what's been your most successful film, and I'm not talking online YouTube type stuff.
Yeah. Totally. I would say so. We have two projects I would say that are most successful. We have a pretty well critically acclaimed film that was called Luz, The Flower of Evil. Luz, L-U-Z as in light in Spanish. That was a Colombian film, which we were able to remote produce on. That went to Sigus Film Festival and then was later bought up and ended up on a lot of streaming services, and it ended up in theaters in Latin American countries. It was on Shudder for a long time. They had a multi-year deal for its streaming before it left.
That was probably our most
critically acclaimed film. And then last week or 2 weeks ago, we actually had the #1 movie on Stars, which was Camp Pleasant Lake.
Nice.
It was kind of like a B-movie horror movie. That was probably like our biggest commercial success.
Yeah, so that'd be our most recent one. That was pretty cool. That had Jonathan Lipnicki in it, and he was the kid from Stuart Little. So he was playing a really dark role, which was really kind of crazy. And we had we had those horror cult actors like Bonnie Aarons, who is the lead actress in The Nun. She plays the nun. So we had some of those cult horror people in that as well. So it hit some notes of like, we're going to take this child actor and let's kind of do something kind of crazy because they're older now. And let's take some of these cult horror people and put them together. And that was #1 on Stars recently. So that was really cool to see.
There's something nice to be said about, an actor who's played like really innocent roles like Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, putting him in some kind of weird suspense or horror. There's something nice in that.
Oh, absolutely. It's always fun and I think it's fun for the actors too, to kind of get out of their element a little bit and like what they're known for and be something that's like totally different.
Tell me, at Egerton Crescent Productions, you are mainly producers? Do you get involved? Are you writing scripts? Are you directing? What are your main roles within the business?
I think it depends a lot on the project, it depends on what it needs. I'd say we're primarily producers, but producer kind of is a word for everything.
Yeah, it is. My next question was, so what are we talking there? What does that actually mean?
Yeah. Generally, I feel like producers, like, oftentimes they'll have the idea for something, or someone comes to them with an idea for something, and then it's really about taking it from an idea all the way through until it's released and done. So you're helping with whatever's needed. Sometimes you're writing, sometimes you're hiring writers, sometimes you're filming, sometimes you're hiring filmers. It really depends on the project. But basically, everything is your responsibility. It's kind of like being a manager at a store. It's like, you're managing a bunch of people, but if someone calls out, you got to step in. It's, so you kind of have to, and you have to know everyone too. You have to know what they're doing, what needs to happen. If you're hiring an editor, you need to know a good editor, a bad editor. Is that a good edit? What feedback?
And I would say we have,
so you kind of have to know all your.
And I would say we
spots.
have two different types of content strategy at Egerton Crescent Productions. We have an external and kind of an internal. External, we get involved in projects that need help through, we used to do a lot more financing. We've stepped away from it. In finding financing, we still occasionally help with submissions for film festivals, adding credibility to that, being able to talk to the programmers that we've sent films through before, things like that. And then internally, we operate all of our own YouTube, all of our own TikTok, and all of our own Instagram. So we make all of the content internally for that. We have our own team that edits that, we write that, we film that. So we have two very different avenues. Both are equally as successful. And I think the YouTube and TikTok and Instagram has been more what our focus has been as of late. And we're moving back towards more traditional filmmaking as Hollywood is healing. But we made more of that big push when the industry went into the SAG strikes. And then it was looking like we're going to get an IATSE strike and more union strikes coming. So we were making a bigger push towards web-based content. And now we're happily making a way back towards more traditional film-based content. But we're still keeping this going, though.
What happened to Hollywood? I know, like, writer's strike, COVID, then all the streaming services who have their own production budgets, I'm assuming, sort of went and did their thing. Just from a distance, and again, as a viewer, as a watcher of films, it feels like Hollywood's lost its shine. Is that dramatic?
I mean, not super dramatic. I think even Hollywood would tell you it's lost some of its shine. I think it'll recover. I don't think Hollywood's like down and out forever. I think it's kind of been a bad storm of a lot of things. Like superhero films were carrying Hollywood for a long time. They kind of keeled over. COVID hit. Streaming services, all of the big companies in 2019 doubled down on Disney Plus, HBO Max, Paramount, and all those things. So it de-incentivized movies even further. So all of that kind of hit within like a 2-year span, and it really just killed a lot of momentum in that industry, I feel like. I also think just a lot of new tools are coming into play with like AI and other things that
the barrier to
really
entry is
changing
just gone.
the game. Yeah, and I think that's the other thing too is a lot of stuff like, coming up through Hollywood traditionally is changing a lot because a lot of people, you're seeing, Mark Rober has an Amazon show and Mr. Beast is getting a show. A lot of those people are the line between content creator and filmmaker and, having a TV show is starting to blur into one thing. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of upheaval is a lot of traditional industry is getting upheaved, but I think it's going to rebound into a new thing with new jobs and new positions in the future.
I love watching a bit of disruption. Anyone who comes in and disrupts an industry, man, the Ubers of the world, the Airbnbs, Hollywood's next. We have touched on this, fellas, but the entertainment industry, it's crowded. Social media content's booming. AI, since November 2022, like it's so recent, is threatening creativity. And there's a multitude of streaming services with big budgets. How does the little guy get noticed? Someone listening to this going, I'm just going to go and get a job for the man. This is way too hard. How do you get noticed? You've shared some great ideas already. Anything you want to add to that?
I think for me, and the way that we've been thinking about this a lot, is there's actually almost more of a democratic point of entry, as in there's more people. The people are having the vote of who is going to be the celebrity by views, clicks, likes, things like that. And with such a multitude of self-upload platforms, if you want to be a TikTok star, work on that. You want to be on YouTube, work on that. You want to be on Instagram, work on that, etc. And so anyone who now has the capability of a phone that can record something, the free installed editing app, and the free to upload website, if you're good at it and you put in a lot of effort to it and you perfect your craft, you actually have a better chance to get into the industry now than I think you have before, because the traditional routes were incredibly difficult. You really had to know someone or shine at a film festival or grind forever doing really bad roles you don't want to do to get noticed. Where now you can do your craft, whatever that speciality is, and show, look, I'm a really funny gaming comedian, and this is what I do, and I can use this personality to transfer and move laterally. And now there's less of a barrier to entry, I think, than previously, even though it is definitely hard to get noticed in that big pool of people. That is my caveat on that one.
Yeah. No, well said. Yeah. Well said, Charles. Omar?
Yeah, I think it's not easy. It's never easy.
No.
I mean, if it was super easy, everyone would do it. But I think, there's so many tools to leverage now. And, like, in a lot of spaces, I mean, again, we're grabbing, Hollywood is grabbing talent from online all the time. I mean, even Tonight shows and things like that, or we're getting YouTubers that are taking over those positions and things. So, connect with your audience, find your audience and worry about that first. And that can take years. I'm not saying it's super simple, but I've known tons of people, or even just, whatever it is. I know people that were animators, where they started animating stuff and posting it online, and they got really popular. Or people that do edits. They'll edit stuff that already exists into something that fans like even more than the traditional edit, and they'll get an editing job off of that, because you're connecting with that audience, and someone's going to notice and go, wow, can you do that for me? And that's an in.
And we talk a lot we spoke a lot about technology, phones and the ability to upload to all these different services for free, and editing software. All that's very accessible. I think the scariest part of all that, which we have touched on, is the idea, the power of the idea. Have a good script, have a good idea first and foremost that you can.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I would definitely argue that's the thing. It's the power of the story and the power of the delivery of it. One of the biggest streamers right now is named Kai, and his stream, no one would deem as like a beautiful set or methodically thought out, but he is hilarious, and the stories that he tells on that stream is hilarious, and people can engage with that because they can relate to that person. They can relate to this guy who's in his basement with a porta potty and streaming. It's hilarious. And
I'll take your word for it, Charles.
This streamer, Kevin Hart came on the stream because he liked the stream so much on that, like, pulling from talent and things like that. They're getting these huge people to come in from that, and kind of on that idea, like, building off of ideas. Most YouTubers now, they build off of a thumbnail.
Yes.
They will come up with a title and a thumbnail, and that's the idea, and will that sell? And then they'll build a video around it. So that's where it's like that main idea, that's the selling point.
Speaking of ideas, Omar and Charles, recently you released, I think pronounced, a haiku book?
Haiku book, yeah.
Which is Japanese poetry book. Now, I understand it was inspired by Ernest Hemingway's famous words, write drunk, edit sober. I know nothing more. Can you tell us what and why?
So we started with this idea of Omar and I have wanted to, since starting the film thing, we've always said we wanted to write and publish a book. And we've just kind of always procrastinated on the idea. And we didn't have a lot of time, but we decided we can make this work, but only if we were able to shrink down the timeline to make this happen. And so we actually had the idea at a pub earlier, and it's, what if we just sat down one night and wrote a book while we were at one of these places? And so we kind of followed through that. We found a local venue called the Rabbit Hole, which is over in Fort Worth, and they're more than willing to accommodate us for a long time, allow us to film and write this out. So
you filmed yourself doing it?
Yeah, so we filmed ourselves doing it the whole time as well. So we haven't released the video of that, but we do have that video.
Gee, that'd be interesting.
So we went in and we went in with a stack of note cards. We each wrote 50 haikus, one on each note card, threw them in a Ziploc bag, and then my lovely wife, who's an author, put together the book for us. And we published on Amazon, and it kind of, I want to say miraculously, became a bestseller. But we did a huge social media push with it. We did Instagram videos with it. We did TikTok videos with it, promoted it a lot. And between family, friends, and all of our followers, it did make the #1 best-selling book for poetry on Amazon, which is ridiculous.
Charles,
it's actually
said...
There's the cover.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
The inebriated haikus. You said you put 50 haikus into a bag. What is a haiku?
So a haiku is a poem which is 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. And that's why we went with this platform. Why we went with this style, because we knew that we could write that amount of material, and theoretically into the late night at a pub we could finish our 50 haikus each to finish out 100 for the book, because we knew we could stick with it. It was short enough where we could do it. And Omar can speak to this. We were recently in Japan filming one of our videos, and this is kind of where we got the idea of this would kind of be a fun thing. It would match our content.
Yeah, I think we really wanted to make something that like our audience would like, and we have a lot of humor about, bar humor, drinking humor, that type of stuff. And we also do travel videos where we'll go out and film stuff in crazy locations, like we've been to Japan and Dubai and things like that. And so, the Japan one, we kind of learned about haiku and all that, and we were like, oh, what a cool way to kind of just incorporate a lot of the stuff that our audience enjoys into one product.
That's a fun idea. To me, as a marketing guy, it sounds like a little bit of guerrilla marketing as a way of getting Egerton Crescent Productions noticed. Was that the underlying premise? And if so, did it do that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. we always wanted to write a book, but there's definitely a point where you're like, we also could give something that our audience would like. We could expand into new territory. We could try to get, some people talking about it, reading it, thinking about it, sitting on a coffee table, a gift at Christmas, anything like that. We were partially inspired by the Seinfeld Kramer coffee table book.
Oh, I don't know
that
type
of thing where it's.
I'm reading Kramer's autobiography right at the moment.
Okay. So the joke in the show was a coffee table book about coffee tables. So the whole book was containing pictures of coffee tables and stories about them to sit on your coffee table.
And it turns into a coffee table, and that was like his marketing ploy. And so we were like, I feel like we could do something with that.
Boys, I could keep talking forever. There is one other idea I want to understand that you've been responsible for. You have got a billboard or had a billboard campaign running in Times Square. Like, again, is there a straight line between this and Egerton Crescent Productions?
Yeah, it was crazy. And it was over the 4th of July weekend as well, so it was busy. Like, the video we saw from it, we had a live feed that we could access to see the billboard. It was full, looked like New Year's. It was over the 4th of July weekend.
What was the billboard for?
So we're kind of doing a big push because we're heading towards New York for a lot of filming next year and a lot of bigger projects. And so we're trying to kind of reestablish that because we originally are from back east. I originally, went to high school in New York. Charlie grew up in Vermont and Connecticut in that area, and he spent a lot of time in New York. So we kind of are reconnecting to our roots. And so we were like, what would be a really cool thing? And we were talking to some people that we're working with next year. And we were like, what we could do? I think we could promote the entire brand through Times Square and just do something really cool. And so just another example. And it was kind of with the book, and we were the stars thing with our, our movie all at the same time. We're like, this is the time. Let's do it. Let's strike while the iron's hot. Honestly, I didn't pay for it, so I can't really say. that was a partner for next year. So.
Okay, a nice partner.
It was very nicely included in a pre-existing deal. It was to sweeten the pot. It was great. It was very cool.
Part of a deal next year. So
if that partner wants to run another billboard in Times Square, the Small Business Big Marketing Spotlight with this episode would probably be something that we could maybe negotiate.
I'm sure we could.
Fellas, great story, and one in the making too. It's a work in progress. I mean, I'd be pretty interested to talk to you guys in 2 or 5 years' time, because I feel like you're on a really lovely trajectory. You're not in a rush. You're smart about how you do it, and I wish you huge success in the future. How do people find you?
So we're on Instagram and TikTok as under Tumbleweed. You can also find Charlie on Instagram. He has an Instagram. I'm less savvy with Instagram, so I know the basics of it, but I browse it less.
Well, you're too young. You can't even get into a pub yet, so
right, yeah.
So we're official _ Tumbleweed on both Instagram and TikTok, and then we're Tumbleweed Gaming on YouTube.
Awesome. I'll put those links in the show notes. Boys, thanks so much for sharing your story. And to you, the motivated business owner, thank you for getting this far. If you feel a little brighter thanks to this episode of the Small Business Big Marketing Spotlight, then you'll find more conversations with successful entrepreneurs just like these fellas over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com or on your favourite podcast app. Until next time, may you and your business shine. Thanks, fellas.